Hello, hello, hello. Good evening, good afternoon. Hello. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the live stream on today. As you are tuning in, be sure to let me know where you are tuning in from, whether you are watching this live or you are catching the replay. It's always great to know who I'm speaking with, who I'm having a conversation with, and who has questions. So as you have questions, feel free to type them in the chat. Always looking forward to hearing what questions you have, what comments, and looking forward to continuing this conversation. Y'all, this is the first live stream of 2026 for me. I'm sure there have been plenty of other great live streams, but this is the first live stream for me in 2026. And I am very excited about how things are going to evolve this year, how things are going to maybe shift slightly, not entirely, but slightly. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and get into it, y'all, because when I'm by myself doing these live streams, it's only about 15, 20 minutes. But whenever I have guests, sometimes we go a little bit longer. But today, got to stick to this 15, 20 minutes, right? Got to value the time, value the clock. Okay, so today's topic is workplace value. The thing we pretend is obvious. Ooh. So, workplace value, the thing that we pretend is obvious. So, what we're talking about today is there's actually a question that surrounds this topic. And that question is, why do capable people still feel invisible at work? Why do capable people still feel invisible at work? Sorry, y'all, that was my phone. And the reason why this question says, why do they still feel invisible at work, is because, excuse me, as someone who if someone who is doing some great work, they are leaning into their strengths, they're leaning into their capabilities. If they are doing all of these things, why is it that they still feel that they're not being seen, that they're not being valued, and that their work isn't being noticed? And so that is what we are going to talk a little bit more about today. So, whether you are the person that is feeling like, hey, I'm not being seen, I'm not being noticed, or perhaps you are someone who is in a leadership role and you're wondering, how can we ensure that our team members, our direct reports, our individual contributors are feeling seen? And this is definitely the live stream for you. Okay, so for those of you who do not know who I am, my name is Lapora Lindsay, and I talk about workplace value. And when we talk about workplace value, it is something that is very it's distinctive, but it's also something that I feel like overlaps with a lot of the different things that we cover. So one of the things when it comes to workplace value that I think is really important is that there is contribution and then there's workplace value. When we talk about contributing in the workplace, this is about, what do you have to offer? What do you have to offer? What are your skills, your strengths, and abilities? And how does that benefit the team, the department, or even the company as a whole in moving forward? You are contributing in that way. Workplace value is about how that contribution is recognized and used. So, how do your teammates find what you do useful? How do your teammates find what you do valuable? You can contribute and still no one quite feels like it is a value add. And that doesn't mean that it's not. We're going to get into that. So this isn't something where it's necessarily something that you have to change, but it is something where each of us has a part to evaluate the organization that we are in, and looking at how we contribute, how we add value, and also if there are any limitations there. And so when we talk about workplace value, this is about How are we contributing in a way that others recognize and that others recognize as being, hey, this is something that is really, really useful to me. So as we're getting into this, we're answering the question, why do capable people feel invisible at work? If you have any questions, you have any comments, you can feel free to put those in the chat at any point in time. Okay. So when we're talking about workplace value, it's really important to understand that in order for it to be a value add or in order for it to be valuable, it has to be something that is recognized as being a value add that has to be translated, and it also has to be applied. It can't just be produced. And that essentially means that, let's say one of the skills that you have is, doing really good Excel sheets. You can't just do the Excel sheets. It has to go beyond that. What is the tie-in? How is this beneficial? How is this useful? But there is some more nuance into that, and we're going to get into that over the next 6 minutes, y'all, because we're only here for about 15, 20 minutes today. So here is one of the things that I really want you to keep in mind. Workplace value, it isn't about talent. It's about interpretation. And I'll say that one more time and we'll talk about what that means. Workplace value isn't just about talent. It is about interpretation. With this question of how can capable people still feel unseen at work or unvalued at work, you can have two people who are doing the exact same role. They have the exact same strengths, the exact same abilities when they're bringing that into the workplace, right? But they can have two very different feelings, even if they have the same supervisor and the supervisor is one that's open to what they have to offer. Someone who you could have one of them who still feel like they're not being seen, feel like they're not being heard, and one person who feels like they are. And with that, I think that it's important to recognize that it's about that recognizing, the translating, and applying it. Because if we don't get that translation piece is essentially how is what the work that I do, the information that I have, the data that I have, how is that something that is useful for the people that I work with? The other part or the other piece of this is there is an internal worth versus an external validation. And the one of the reasons why it's so important to differentiate the two when we're talking about workplace value is because when we take our self-worth and or our internal worth and we say, hey, this is why I feel like my work doesn't matter. We are essentially conflating our internal worth with external validation. So let's talk about these two. Internal worth is how we view ourselves. Oops, sorry, got a comment here. Oh, hello. Hi, Laura. So good to have you. So when we talk about our internal worth, right? Our internal worth is about how we view ourselves. How do we see ourselves? And I have to say that each and every one of us always has value. 100%, we always have value when we're talking about that internal worth. Don't let anybody tell you different. This is my moment of inspiring and encouraging you to recognize that. But then there is external validation. And when we talk about external validation, this is about what other people say about us, but we use that to determine how valuable we are. And that's where the challenge comes in because we feel that we need to hear what people say about us in order to view ourselves a certain way. But we don't. Recognition is different. Validation is, In order for me to feel like I am adding value to the workplace, I need somebody else to say, hey, this is what, oh, thanks so much, Ray. I need somebody to say, hey, this is what I need to hear for me to know that I'm doing a good job. But y'all, that's not going to always happen. That won't always be present. And so that internal worth is recognizing that there is something that we have to offer. The workplace value is us now recognizing, translating, and applying that worth in the workplace. And so to do that, a large part is really understanding and connecting. So, but how do we move forward? Because I don't want to make this seem like this is something where the responsibility is solely on you as an individual, regardless of what your role is, because it does go beyond that. So when we're talking about this, we have to pay attention to what we contribute that helps move things forward. I was talking about those Excel sheets earlier. Not just doing Excel sheets, but what projects are moving things forward? What things that we do, what doesn't get named? What doesn't get credited? What is repeated by others or not repeated by others? And the reason for taking the opportunity to do this is because it's going to do something that's super important so that you don't feel like the responsibility is fully on you. When we take the time to pay attention to how we contribute and to see what moves things forward and what doesn't, it defines personal limitations versus system limitations. Personal limitations versus system limitations. Personal limitations is when we maybe there's something that we don't want to do or we can do and we've done all that we can do. That's our limitation, what we can do as an individual. And then we have the system limitation, which is essentially how the organization itself works, the structures that are in place. And the reason why this is so important is when we can determine what is our limitation versus what is the organization and their structural limitation, it helps us to move through the system that we are in. Case in point, one of the things that a conversation that's consistently coming up is, how do I influence up? A question that I'm constantly being asked: how do I influence up? And sometimes you cannot influence up. Sometimes because the system doesn't allow that access. But is there an opportunity to access your peers? Is there an opportunity to access cross departmentally? So those are just things to think about. When we go back to that initial question, why do capable people still feel invisible at work? Sometimes it is the system that we are in. Sometimes it's a matter of taking some time to observe and figure out what is currently working, what isn't working, and figuring out how to move forward from there. And overall, truly just understanding how systems recognize value, how your system that you're in, how it recognizes value, and determine whether your type of contribution matters, and even determining if this is something that you want to continuously contribute to, or perhaps if there is something different. And if you do, or if you are someone who's in a leadership role and has the ability to adjust those systems, and it's not all on you to change that, but to say what is currently in place to get people to see the value that they have. All right, y'all. So that is all that I have for today. First live stream of the year. If you're just joining me for the first time, I thank you so much for taking the time. I know that your time is valuable. Thank you so much. I hope that you'll join me next Sunday. I go live every Sunday at 5:30 Central Time. And if you don't catch the live, be sure to join in and catch the replay. And I would love to hear from you. If you have questions, you can feel free to send me a direct message. All right, y'all. That's all that I have for now. I know I sound a little congested, but just remember to stay adding value. Have a good one.